I walked into that five-star hotel with my goat, and everyone laughed at me. But no one imagined that I was the heir to the largest farm in the region, and when the owner discovered who I really was, silence fell over the room. Subscribe to our channel now and see how a simple farmer turned the tables and shut the mouths of those who humiliated him. The scorching Denver sun punished the main avenue when Ethan Miller stepped off the intercity bus, carrying only a worn backpack and guiding his inseparable companion Billy, a medium-sized striped goat with amber eyes that conveyed an almost human intelligence. The 28-year-old man, with skin bronzed from working in the fields and calloused hands, adjusted his straw hat over his black curly hair while observing the imposing building that rose before him. The Golden Mountain Hotel, the most luxurious establishment in the Colorado capital. "Let's go, Billy. It's our time to see how the big city folks live," murmured Ethan, running his hand through the soft fur of the animal that had accompanied him since childhood on the small family rural property in Three Pines in rural Colorado. The lobby of the Golden Mountain was the very definition of opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, while red velvet sofas contrasted with the polished marble floor. Executives in impeccable suits and women with gleaming jewelry moved with the naturalness of those accustomed to luxury. Ethan's entrance with Billy was like a tear in the perfect canvas of that picture of urban elegance. First came the looks of astonishment, then the indiscreet whispers. Ethan walked to the reception desk, where a young woman in an impeccable suit stared at him with a mixture of surprise and poorly disguised contempt. "May I help you?" asked Megan Porter, the receptionist, without hiding the disdain in her voice, while her eyes alternated between the young man and the goat accompanying him. "Good afternoon. I'd like a room, please." "The best you have available," Ethan replied, with the simplicity of someone who doesn't realize they're out of place. Megan cleared her throat. "Sir, I regret to inform you that we do not allow animals on the hotel premises, and particularly," she lowered her voice as if sharing a secret, "I've never seen anyone bring a goat to an establishment like this." "Billy isn't a simple animal. He's practically family," Ethan explained naturally. "He goes everywhere with me. Don't worry, he's better behaved than many people out there." The response provoked contained laughter from the guests observing the scene. Megan, increasingly impatient, pressed a discreet button under the counter. "I ask that you leave immediately or I'll have to call security. This is a five-star hotel, not a stable," she said, now without any attempt at courtesy. Ethan frowned, feeling the weight of humiliation. "I can pay for the room. I'm willing to leave a deposit for Billy, too." At that moment, two burly men in dark uniforms approached. "Any problem, Miss Porter?" asked the taller of the security guards. "Please escort this gentleman and his animal outside. They're disturbing our guests," ordered Megan. What followed was a scene of absolute embarrassment. Despite Ethan's polite protests, the security guards escorted him outside, while the guests' gazes followed him with a mixture of amusement and disdain. Billy, sensing the tension, emitted a low bleat, as if he too felt the humiliation. "Go back to the farm, Hick," shouted a laughing teenager, protected by the status of his business executive parents. Outside, sitting on the sidewalk with Billy by his side, Ethan felt the weight of fatigue from the long journey and rejection. The big city had always seemed distant from his reality, but he never imagined being treated with such contempt. He had saved for months for this trip, which represented not only a well-deserved rest, but also an opportunity to expand his business horizons. On the 20th floor of the hotel, in a room filled with security monitors, Richard Blackwell, the owner of the Golden Mountain, was casually observing the images when the scene of the expulsion caught his attention. Something in the young farmer's face seemed familiar to him, arousing an unusual curiosity. "Who is that young man?" he asked the head of security. "A country bumpkin who tried to check in with a goat, sir. The reception team has already solved the problem." Richard frowned. "There's something about him. Find out who he is. It might be important." Meanwhile, on the sidewalk, Ethan stroked Billy, observing the frantic movement of the avenue. "Don't worry, friend. We'll find another place to stay. Maybe not as fancy, but certainly more welcoming." At that moment, his cell phone vibrated, It was a notification from the Agricultural Trading app. One of the largest hotel chains in the region had just opened a bid for exclusive supply of organic products. Coincidentally, the headquarters of this chain was located just a few blocks away. Ethan smiled, thinking of the irony. New Hope Farm, the property he had recently inherited from his grandfather, was precisely known for producing high-quality organic products. "Look, at that, Billy. We came here to expand our business, and it seems the opportunities are closer than we imagined," he commented, already considering participating in the bid. What Ethan didn't know was that the rural empire he had inherited was much more valuable and strategic than he imagined. New Hope Farm wasn't just another property in rural Colorado. It was the largest producer of premium organic products in the state, supplier to the country's main starred restaurants, and holder of internationally coveted sustainable techniques. In Richard Blackwell's office, the discovery fell like a bomb. "The goat guy, is that Ethan Miller? The heir to New Hope?" he exclaimed, almost dropping his imported coffee cup. "Yes, sir," confirmed his assistant, Sarah Johnson. Apparently, he inherited everything after his grandfather, Frank Miller, passed away. His farm supplies all our luxury competitors and recently won the International Agricultural Sustainability Award. Richard ran his hand through his graying hair, suddenly aware of the magnitude of the mistake made. The Golden Mountain had been trying for months to establish a partnership with New Hope, without success, and now his team had humiliated and expelled the very owner of the company. "Find him." Immediately, he ordered his assistant, while nervously pacing the office decorated with designer furniture. "Offer whatever is necessary. I want him back in this hotel before any competitor welcomes him." On the sidewalk, Ethan stood up and adjusted the backpack on his back. "Let's go, Billy. This city still has a lot to show us, and we have a lot to teach it." Ethan was already walking with Billy down the busy avenue when a black luxury car abruptly parked beside him. From the vehicle emerged a man of about 60, wearing an impeccably cut Italian suit and an expression that mixed anxiety and regret. "Mr. Miller, Ethan Miller," called Richard Blackwell, extending a hand that the young farmer did not care to shake. "I'm Richard Blackwell, owner of the Golden Mountain Hotel. I would like to personally apologize for the terrible misunderstanding that occurred earlier." Ethan observed the man with curiosity, while Billy suspiciously sniffed the expensive pants of the businessman. "Misunderstanding? Your employees made it very clear that people like me are not welcome in your establishment," he replied, with a calmness that contrasted with Richard's evident nervousness. "An unforgivable failure on our team's part," Richard hastened to say, gesturing exaggeratedly. "I wasn't present, but as soon as I learned of the incident, I came personally to invite you to return. The Golden Mountain would be honored to host the owner of the renowned New Hope Farm." A discreet smile formed on Ethan's lips, so that was it. The man had discovered who he was and now completely changed his attitude. Typical. "And what about Billy?" he asked, stroking the head of the goat that was observing the scene with his intelligent amber eyes. Richard swallowed hard, looking at the animal as if evaluating an unexpected obstacle. "Well, normally we don't allow animals, but for you we can make an exception. As long as he stays only in your room, of course." Ethan shook his head negatively. "No, Mr. Blackwell. Either Billy receives the same treatment as me, or we continue our search for another hotel." The businessman blinked several times, processing what he'd just heard. "The same treatment? I don't understand." "It's simple," Ethan explained. "If I'm entitled to room service, Billy will be too. If I can frequent the restaurant, he will accompany me. If I use the swimming pool—" He paused dramatically. "Well, perhaps the pool isn't necessary for him." Richard looked around as if seeking an invisible exit from that absurd situation. The idea of a goat wandering through the corridors of his five-star hotel was simply inconceivable. On the other hand, losing the chance to establish relations with the heir to New Hope would be a devastating blow to his expansion plans. "I agree to your conditions," he finally said, extending his hand again. "It will be a pleasure to receive both of you as our most distinguished guests." Upon returning to the hotel, the scene at reception was completely different. The same Megan who had treated him with disdain now smiled nervously, while other employees, hurried to attend to the illustrious guest and his unusual companion. Ethan observed everything with a mixture of amusement and indignation, noting how treatment could change drastically when his market value was recognized. "This way, Mr. Pai Miller," indicated Richard himself, leading him to the private elevator that went directly to the hotel's penthouse. "We've prepared our presidential suite for you. View of the entire city, jacuzzi, fully stocked bar." "And for Billy?" interrupted Ethan, with a seriousness that hid his internal amusement. Richard hesitated for a second. "We've provided a special mattress and snacks selected by our nutrition team." The presidential suite was a spectacle in itself. With almost 3,000 square feet, it offered luxuries that Ethan, despite his newly inherited wealth, had never experienced. While the employees withdrew after leaving the luggage, Billy was already exploring the ample space, his hooves making a peculiar sound on the Italian marble floor. "What do you think, friend? Was the initial humiliation worth it?" asked Ethan to the goat, who responded with a bleat before comfortably climbing onto one of the white leather sofas. In the following hours, Billy's presence in the hotel caused exactly the effect that Ethan had predicted: controlled and revealing chaos. During dinner at the Golden Mountain starred restaurant, the goat remained seated in a specially adapted chair next to his owner, curiously observing the sophisticated dishes that were served. "He seems to be enjoying the environment," commented Teresa Wilson, the renowned chef who surprisingly had found amusement in the situation. "I've never cooked for a goat before." "Billy has refined taste," joked Ethan. "On the farm, he always chooses the best leaves from each plant." The chef smiled. "I've brought some fresh, organic vegetables for him. Curiously, they're from your farm. We've been using New Hope products for years, but I never had the pleasure of meeting the owner." While they talked, Richard nervously observed from the restaurant entrance. The goat's presence had become the main topic among guests, some finding the situation hilarious, others showing contained indignation. The businessman alternated between forced smiles for Ethan and looks of despair at his team. After dinner, Ethan decided to visit the hotel bar. With Billy at his side, he entered the elegant environment where executives and socialites sipped expensive drinks. The silence was instantaneous, followed by indiscreet whispers. "It's the owner of that organic farm," someone commented. "I heard he's a millionaire despite looking like a hick," whispered another person. "But why the hell does he walk around with a goat?" questioned a third. Ethan ordered an artisanal whiskey, a product of his own farm which the bar kept as a luxury item. While drinking, he observed people's reactions, realizing with growing clarity how superficial the interactions were in that environment. The real test came when Billy, bored with immobility, decided to explore the bar on his own. In a matter of seconds, the animal knocked over a tray of glasses, causing a crash that made everyone present turn around. Richard, who had just entered the bar, rushed to control the situation. "Don't worry, everything is under control. It's just a special guest of the hotel," he tried to explain, while assistants were already cleaning up the mess. Ethan observed the scene with a discreet smile. "Sorry about Billy. He gets restless when he spends too much time standing still." "Understandable, understandable," replied Richard, with a smile so forced it seemed painful. "Perhaps it's time to return to the suite. We've prepared a special dessert service that can be served there." Back in the suite, Ethan received an unexpected call. It was Charles Edwards, one of the largest investors in the region's hotel sector. "Mr. Miller, I heard you're staying at the Golden Mountain. Interesting choice considering our meeting scheduled for tomorrow," commented the investor with a calculated voice. "Meeting?" asked Ethan, genuinely confused. "About the exclusive supply for the Continental chain, my new venture. I thought you were in the city precisely for that," explained Charles. "But perhaps Richard has already made an irrefusable offer." The puzzle piece finally fit. Charles was Richard's main competitor, and both were competing for the supply of New Hope farm products. This explained the hotel owner's desperation to please him. "Actually, I'm just exploring the options," Ethan replied diplomatically. "It would be a pleasure to meet you tomorrow to discuss." Upon hanging up, Ethan found Richard standing at the suite door, with an expression that mixed curiosity and concern. "I hope everything is to your liking," said the businessman. "I came personally to check if you need anything special." Ethan smiled, now perfectly understanding the game in which he was involved. "Actually, I would like to learn more about your hotel, Mr. Blackwell, especially the kitchen. I'm interested in knowing how my products are used here." Richard's face lit up. It was his chance to impress the young producer. "It will be a pleasure to personally show our facilities tomorrow. We take great pride in our partnership with quality suppliers." "Partnership?" questioned Ethan with a raised eyebrow. "Interesting that you mentioned that. I didn't know we had an established partnership." Richard stuttered, realizing his mistake. "Well, I meant a potential partnership, something that would be beneficial for both of us." "Of course," replied Ethan, stroking Billy, who was now resting peacefully on the Italian leather sofa. "Tomorrow we'll talk more about this, and naturally, Billy will accompany me on the tour." The businessman swallowed hard, imagining the EI goat among the expensive equipment of his starred kitchen. "Naturally," he managed to reply before withdrawing with hasty steps. The next morning dawned with Denver's sky surprisingly clear. Ethan woke up early, as he had been in the habit of doing since childhood on the farm. He found Billy already, awake, observing the city through the wide window of the presidential suite. "Impressive, isn't it, friend?" he commented, joining the goat in contemplating the urban landscape. "But I still prefer our view of the mountains of Three Pines." The tour of the hotel kitchen was scheduled for 9 o'clock, but Ethan decided to go down earlier to have breakfast in the restaurant. As expected, Billy's presence continued to cause a stir among the guests, although now the looks were more of curiosity than disapproval. "Good morning, Mr. Miller," greeted Teresa, the chef he had met the night before. "I've personally prepared a special breakfast for you, and also something for your companion." Ethan smiled, grateful for the chef's genuine sympathy. "Thank you, Teresa. It's comforting to find people who don't judge by appearances." In the kitchen, I've learned that the simplest ingredients often produce the most extraordinary flavors, she replied philosophically. Besides, your goat seems to have more class than many of our regular guests. While savoring a breakfast prepared with products from his own farm, Ethan observed the movement in the restaurant. Executives in suits, wealthy families, foreign tourists, all seemed to inhabit a completely different world from his, despite his recent status as the owner of an agricultural empire. Richard appeared punctually at 9, once again impeccably dressed and visibly anxious. "Did you sleep well, Mr. Miller?" he asked with exaggerated cordiality. "Perfectly," replied Ethan. "Although Billy missed the smell of the countryside, he usually sleeps with the window open." "We can provide natural air fresheners if you prefer," suggested Richard, in a demonstration of how far he was willing to go to please. The visit to the kitchen was a revealing experience. Chef Teresa, with evident pride, showed how she used New Hope Farm products in various award-winning dishes of the restaurant. "Your cherry tomatoes are incomparable," she explained, while preparing a sample for Ethan. "And the aromatic herbs have a freshness that we don't find in any other supplier." Ethan observed everything with genuine interest, while Billy remained surprisingly well-behaved at his side. The goat seemed to understand the importance of that moment for his owner. "It's gratifying to see the final destination of our products," commented Ethan. "On the farm, we cultivate with techniques that my grandfather perfected over decades. He always said that respect for the land translates into the flavor of food." Richard, who accompanied the visit at a safe distance from Billy, took the cue. "Your grandfather was a visionary man. New Hope has always been a reference in sustainability long before it became fashionable." "You knew my grandfather?" asked Ethan, genuinely surprised. A brief discomfort passed over Richard's face. "We had some meetings, business mainly." Before the conversation could continue, they were interrupted by the unexpected arrival of Charles Edwards, the investor who had called the night before. "Ethan Miller, finally we meet in person," exclaimed Charles, completely ignoring Richard's presence. "I see you're getting to know the Golden Mountain facilities. Interesting, considering our meeting scheduled to discuss the exclusive partnership with Continental." Richard's face visibly paled while Teresa disguised a smile, continuing to prepare the lunch dishes. "Charles, greeted Richard coldly. "I didn't know you had a habit of invading my hotel's kitchen." When I heard that young Miller was here, I couldn't resist, replied the investor with a calculated smile. "After all, we're all interested in the exceptional products of New Hope, aren't we?" The tension was palpable, and Ethan found himself at the center of a power dispute that transcended the simple question of agricultural supply. There was history between those two men, something that went beyond business. "Actually," intervened Ethan, "I'm still evaluating the possibilities for the distribution of the farm's products. Nothing is decided." Charles smiled triumphantly. Of course, but I'm sure my proposal will be unbeatable. Exclusivity for the continental chain, with a 30% increase in the value of the products." Richard adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable. "Could we discuss this in a more appropriate environment? We are in the kitchen, after all." "For me, there's no problem," replied Ethan with simplicity. "I like transparency in business. That's how my grandfather taught me." The rest of the morning passed in a climate of barely disguised competition between the two businessmen. Each tried in his own way to impress Ethan with increasingly ambitious proposals and promises. The young farmer, however, remained calmly observant, analyzing not only the offers but mainly the character of the men who made them. In the afternoon, Richard surprised everyone by announcing a special cocktail party in honor of Ethan to be held in the hotel's main hall that same evening. "An opportunity for our main partners to meet the heir to New Hope," he explained, clearly trying to score points against Charles. Back in the suite to rest before the event, Ethan reflected on the events. The initial hostility had transformed into an excessive flattery, all because of his newly discovered commercial value. Billy, sensing his contemplative state, approached, resting his head on his knee. "You know, Billy, Grandpa always said that the true value of a person is in how they treat those who can offer them nothing," he murmured, stroking the animal. "I think it's time to teach these businessmen that lesson." The cocktail party was organized with the characteristic opulence of the Golden Mountain. The cream of Denver society attended, attracted not only by the hotel's reputation, but mainly by the curiosity to meet the mysterious rural heir who walked around with a goat. Ethan arrived purposely late, with Billy impeccably clean and adorned with a small green scarf around his neck, the colors of New Hope Farm. The entrance of the duo caused the expected buzz, but Ethan noticed that now the looks were more of admiration than disdain. Richard hurried to receive them, leading them to the center of the hall where a microphone was prepared. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of introducing Mr. Ethan Miller, owner of the renowned New Hope Farm." Polite applause echoed through the hall, while Charles observed the scene from a corner with an ironic smile on his lips. "Thank you for the reception, Mr. Blackwell," thanked Ethan, taking the microphone. "It's a quite different situation from what I experienced yesterday when I arrived at this same hotel." An uncomfortable silence took over the environment. "For those who don't know, when I arrived here with Billy," he continued, indicating the goat at his side, "we were treated as unwanted intruders. I was escorted out by security guards under looks of contempt from the guests, just because I didn't correspond to the expected image of a client of this establishment." Richard turned pale, while murmurs ran through the hall. I don't tell this to cause embarrassment, but to share a reflection. Minutes after my expulsion, when they discovered that I was the owner of New Hope, everything changed. Suddenly, I was worthy of respect, attention, care. Ethan paused, his eyes scanning each face present. My grandfather, Frank Miller, was born in a humble family. He worked his entire life on the land, with his hands, building with sweat what is today an agricultural empire. He taught me that the true value of a person is not in their titles or possessions, but in their essence. At this moment, the unexpected happened. Billy, perhaps bored with the speech or attracted by the nearby flower arrangement, decided to explore the improvised stage. In seconds, he knocked over a decorative vase, causing a crash that provoked nervous laughter in the audience. Instead of showing embarrassment, Ethan smiled. "See, Billy also has something to teach us. He doesn't care about social status or appearances. For him, I'm just Ethan, the same boy who saved him when he was an abandoned kid. Taking advantage of the moment, Ethan made a decision that surprised everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, after careful consideration, I've decided that New Hope Farm will not supply exclusively to either of the hotel chains that are competing for our products. Both Richard and Charles couldn't hide their shock. Instead, I propose a new approach. We will supply to both chains as long as they comply with some conditions. First, that they adopt sustainable practices in all their units. Second, that they invest in training programs for small farmers in the region. And third, he made a significant pause, that they review their policies of treatment toward customers, ensuring respect for all, regardless of their appearance or origin. Reflective silence dominated the hall, followed by spontaneous applause that began with Teresa, the chef, and gradually spread. Richard, understanding the depth of the lesson he had just received, approached Ethan. "Your conditions are more than fair, and I want to apologize, not out of formality, but sincerely, for the treatment you received." Charles, sensing the change in the atmosphere, also approached. "Continental accepts your conditions, Mr. Miller, and I must admit, your approach is refreshing in this business world that is often dehumanized." After the event, when most of the guests had already left, Ethan found himself again with Richard, in a quieter corner of the hall. "You know, Mr. Blackwell, there's something I'm curious to know. What was your relationship with my grandfather?" The businessman sighed deeply. "Frank and I grew up together in Three Pines. We were friends in our youth before I came to the capital. He chose to stay, work the land. I chose to leave, seek fortune in the big city. Over time, we grew apart. When I returned years later, already rich, I tried to buy part of his land to expand my business. He refused, saying that the land was not just an asset, but a heritage for future generations." "And that hurt you?" questioned Ethan. "At the time, yes. I thought he was being stubborn, old-fashioned. Now I realize he was being faithful to his principles, something that in my pursuit of success I may have neglected." In the days that followed, a subtle transformation began to occur at the Golden Mountain Hotel, starting with the reception, where Megan, the receptionist who had treated Ethan with disdain, received special training on equal treatment. Richard, inspired by the lesson received, implemented a social inclusion program, offering employment opportunities for young people from disadvantaged communities. As for Billy, the goat ended up becoming an unusual attraction of the hotel. Richard designated a small space in the inner garden especially for him, where guests could visit him, a constant reminder that appearances often deceive. Ethan returned to Three Pines, taking with him not only the contracts with the two hotel chains but also the satisfaction of having honored his grandfather's legacy, showing that true value is not in what we possess, but in who we are. And the Golden Mountain Hotel was never the same after the visit of the outsider from the countryside and his faithful four-legged companion. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Ethan and his faithful goat Billy has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions and life lessons, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here, clicking to your left. If you like this narrative about appearances, values, and transformations, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships. What moment touched you the most in this story? The initial treatment received by Ethan, the discovery of his true identity, or the outcome with the lesson in humility? Share your impressions in the comments. We're eager to read and respond to each one of you.